Obi-Wan, your only hope. We need you. Well, quoting a movie last week seemed to get people watching, so let's try it again. Hey, it's Tuesday evening and welcome along. So for those who may not have watched before and may not know, I'm Richard Moores, Children's Youth and Families Pastor for Southside Uniting Church. Southside Uniting Church, if you don't know. Well, you're on our page if you don't know, but if you're on YouTube, you might not know. If you don't know, has campuses at Holland Park, Mount Gravatt, Yeronga and Tarragindi. 4 congregations coming together to see what it means to work together as one. Those churches meet on land that the Yagara and the Turrbal people have cared for. And so we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We pray for conciliation between us and them, and we pray that we will walk humbly and carefully on this land just as they have. There you go. Look at people popping in. Quoting a movie seems to be the way to go. So I have to start coming up with movies to start our time with. So thinking about what to talk about this Tuesday, and on Saturday we had an event for our church celebrating ministries. So we'd originally thought about doing a thank you morning tea for people who are involved in various ministries and like building up that culture of that we are thankful for people who lead. So a wonderful thing that people lead in our church, and that maybe we could thank them for that. We tried that at the end of last year, didn't go terribly well. We thought, let's have another go. But then as the ministry team talked it through, we thought, what if we do something different and actually just celebrate what's happening and help people to hear the stories of some of what's happening. The hope was then people would get a chance to talk about the things that they're doing in little groups and support one another. We didn't get there because our speakers took longer than probably maybe we had planned, or we started later. We spent more time eating because as we eat, we could actually take off our masks. But it was an opportunity to hear some stories of what's happening in our churches. And particularly the great joy of 2 of the 3 speakers were young people. So we heard from Caitlin Robinson talking about her experience recently with the United Nations meeting around issues for women. And she was one of the International Girls Brigade representatives. Had originally been going over there last year to meet in New York, but then COVID hit and everything changed and they went to Zoom and they met this year. Sorry, that's our running joke. But so we got to hear about her experience of what it was like to meet with people from around the world, to hear from advocates around issues for women and the equality for women, and what that might mean for her into the future, not just within her role in Girls Brigade, but wider. And then we also heard from Reuben Haig, who is one of our Boys Brigade leaders, and talking about his experience as a leader in brigades. And it was fascinating and wonderful to hear his story and how he talked about, and I had to read it because he wasn't able to be there, but reading it and how he talked about that this has been a chance for him to express his faith and to lead other people in their faith and exploring their faith, which is interesting and wasn't necessarily what I thought Reuben might have talked about. I know that Boys Brigade has been really important in his life, but I thought maybe it was more the structures as opposed to the faith stuff. So it was really interesting to hear that importance of faith to him and how that Boys Brigade has helped him to learn his faith, express his faith, and to help others with their faith. And so it reminded me that we need to hear these stories, because often ministry with young people is a slow thing. So the title for this is It Takes Time, because that's the story of ministry with young people. It takes time. It's not bang, we do things and everything blows off. It'd be lovely if that happened. I guess it's a bit like that challenge that we see of church today as opposed to the early church. You know, we all wish we were like the day of Pentecost, where Peter stands up and preaches and 1,000 people come and join the movement. Wouldn't that be lovely if we had that? Been exploring today Act 6 and 7, and that sense of the disciples are so busy teaching, and there's all these widows going, we're not getting enough food, and they go, well, we need to find other people to help us here. And to do that, don't worry, Rod, I won't go too far into what I'm thinking because I don't want to spoil Sunday evening for you. But yeah, that sense of, wow, the movement was growing so quickly that, we have to find more leaders. We have to work out what we're going to do. Rarely happens. It's interesting, my first paid placement was in a little church in what's called Grays Point in Sydney. So you've got southern Sydney and down onto Hacking River. I think down into Hacking River, there's a couple of little promontories, and one of the key promontories is Peninsula, is Grays Point. Sort of that sense of, if you don't go to Grays Point, you wouldn't know it was there. One sort of road in, or one road out, sort of thing. But I started there. And had been, I think I've talked about before, had sort of been resistant about starting there because, here's this little church in this little peninsula, where's the hope of growing? And here I'd been at one of the biggest Baptist churches in New South Wales. It's like, that's where you want to be. You want to be in the big place, you don't want to be in the small place, But started there, and the woman who I was replacing, because she was going on holidays overseas, sort of took me around for her last week, and it's like, youth group meets on Friday afternoon. We get about 4 or 5 kids. It's easy. And it's like, cool, can manage that. So we probably had 4 or 5 the first week, then we had 8, and then we were up to 10, and then 12, and I was calling in, what friends do I know that are free on Friday afternoon that can come and help? So I pulled in one from Guyamere, pulled in one who went to Guyamere but was from Grays Point, sort of thing. And so occasionally you get these things where it blooms and bursts forward, but generally it's a slow burn. And that ministry with young people is a slow burn. Probably said before when I was talking about my story, that sense at Grays Point, we got a bunch of kids coming along. It started to grow. We probably got into the dozen or so on a Friday afternoon. We started experimenting with Sunday afternoon services and things like that, exploring where we could head. And left after about 18 months because got a full-time position, and there was uncertainty about the funding for the role and things like that. And moved on with that sense of, got the group going, but did we really make a difference as far as faith goes? Probably not. And it wasn't until maybe 4 years later that a couple of guys who'd started coming along to that group messaged me and said, hey, we'd love to catch up sometime. We're now leading and helping to lead in the youth group up at the Anglican church up at Guyamere, or involved there and doing some leading stuff. And it's like, wow, walk away going, probably didn't make much of a difference, but there was something that happened. And so that's our challenge for youth ministry. We go the long journey with young people, and we might see slight changes over the years, but you sit there and go, well, have we made any difference? We need to find those opportunities to hear the stories of the Reubens, to go, yeah, this is key to my faith. To hear the stories at Belmont. We had a young guy come along who was on the sort of autism spectrum, I'd say, somewhere, definitely some social issue type stuff. Started coming in kids club, moved through to youth group, and stuck with us. And one of the joys of that youth group was they just accepted anybody. It was a bunch of odd bods, so any odd bod was accepted. So he was naturally accepted and part of the group. And as the years went on, his mother, talked to us about the fact that, our group has actually been good for his development and who he is and how he functions. And so it's that, how do we go that long journey with young people to help them to grow and to develop who they are? And how do we hear those stories of our young people going, yeah, this is important to us? And as they see this is important to us, maybe they will, stick with us and go, hey, this is somewhere I want to be. But yeah, maybe we don't spend enough time giving our young people a chance to say these things, so that we often get frustrated and go, nothing's happening. It's easy in that sense to look at where we're at now as opposed to when I started. We've got less families connecting in on Sunday mornings. Part of that is the coming back from COVID, a few other issues. Unite has got smaller, Jaffa has got smaller, and things like that. And to go, well, are we making any difference? We're seeing the young people at Tarragindi less. And it's easy to go, oh, goodness, it's all falling apart, it's no good, we've failed, or whatever. But to hear those stories and go, how do we get those inspirations of, yes, something is happening? And again, we've talked before about it, that sense of how are we doing discipleship, so that's our measure. So it's not our measure of, yay, we had 100 kids on Sunday. None of them are really connecting with the faith, but we had 100 kids on Sunday. We had 5 kids on Sunday, and they are just clicking along with their faith. They're wanting to expand and to share their faith. So one of the things that is exciting me at the moment is that we've started back with Sunday school at Tarragindi and Mount Gravatt a couple of times a month. And so as teenagers will do, they will sneak out to Sunday school because that's, I want to say better than sitting in church. I probably shouldn't say that. We want them to be connecting in church, but they will sneak out to. And so the first week, Jack and Kate and Taran snuck out. And then Taran said to me, can I help lead at Sunday school? And it's like, yes, that is where you go. Are there many kids at Mount Gravatt? No. Do we keep it there? Taran wants to lead it? Absolutely. It is 100% worth doing for a small handful of kids and a teenager who we're developing as a leader and helping them to lead and share their faith. That is something that we want to do. That's something that's worthwhile investing into. So yeah, how do we hear those stories? And how do we grab onto those things of this is where it's happening? When we see one of our Jaffa kids went through Jaffa, I don't know when Claire started, but went at least partly through Jaffa, connected, went to, I think they went to one kids camp out and then missed the next one just because emails hadn't got to where I thought they'd got to. Then connected in with, she became a junior leader at Jaffa, connected in with Unite in the end, term 4 of grade 6 when we were trying to connect our Jaffa leaders in to Unite. And then last year in year 7, didn't come along to Unite at all. And it's like, okay, failed that one. But this year has started connecting in again. And again, watching her connect in, and she's a quiet, shy sort of person. But the last week of last term, last week or the week before that, one of the last 2 weeks, there was just the girls there. I might have been the last week. And she was there as well as a few others, and she was quite vocal within the group and sharing and joining in the conversations that we were having and stuff like that. And you go, yeah, this is working. We are seeing a connection. And this is someone from a family who has connected well with Jaffa, but doesn't have a church. It's not like, oh, we're going to church over here and we get our kids to Jaffa. It's not like they're one of our, but has connected in, and the mum encouraging her to, connect in with Unite and stuff like that. So it's these opportunities that we have. How do we hear these stories that are the slow burn, are the slow growing? And we need to keep reminding ourselves of these because it's slow. because we're not going to see just boom. And a lot of what we're trying to do, as we've talked about in the children's and youth space, is about culture change. And culture change takes a long time. As I always say to people, as we look at these changes that we're having with Southside and changing people's mentality, I say, I was in the Upper Hunter for 5 years. For 5 years, we had a team of 2, and for the first 3 years, I think it was, there were sort of 2.5 ministers. And right through that time, even by the end, still trying to get into some people's heads the change that, well, you have 2 ministers. I'm not the minister for Muswellbrook, and, Ross or David is the minister for Scone. We're both your ministers, and both your ministers, you've got 2. It doesn't sound like a massive, concept to grasp. God, had 1, now we've got 2. But 5 years on, we were still having to remind people of this is where we're at. And so, that will be our continual challenge at Southside. You now have a ministry team of 5. I was talking with David this morning, and he was sharing that someone had been talking about, I don't know who my minister is. And I said, well, you've got a ministry team of 5 people. You no longer just have 1, but that's blows their little minds sort of thing. We need to keep thinking how. And so when it comes to children's and youth stuff, we're going from, well, you outsource everything to the church. We do a Sunday school and we teach your kids the faith, to, no, actually, we want you to be doing the faith stuff at home and we'll back you up at church. That's a major cultural change. The cultural change that, we want intergenerational stuff. We want people to be engaging across the generations. That's a massive culture change. These things are going to take time. If we've nailed those in 10 years' time, we'll have done really well. It's not going to be a click. COVID has pushed us on further than we probably would have been. But there's no sense that, it's just a easy click on thing. So we need to keep reminding ourselves, where are those stories? Where are the things that, hey, this has been happening and, it's really great. This has been happening and we've seen a change. This is the impact one of our programs has had. And even if this is the impact that this program has had that wasn't before Southside. So, our sort of senior high kids at Tarragindi, they haven't had much. But this is what holiday program has meant. And not just, the fun in Sunday, one day fun days, but the stuff before that. This is what this stuff has meant to me. How do we hear those stories and go, hey, yes, this is worthwhile? And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's why we challenge and struggle for leaders, because it's like, well, what difference have we made? And as numbers get smaller, well, is it worth investing into this thing that seems to not work because numbers are getting smaller instead of larger? Again, how do we change that culture to be thinking, hang on, we're seeing faith change. We're not seeing huge numbers, but something is happening here. And so it's worth investing in this thing. Talking with David this morning about, I'm starting to work on fun in the Sundays, and I was looking at the teaching material that we'll use and went, yep, that'll work okay last week. And that sense of, so David's comment, what will make Fun and Sundays successful this year? And it's like, well, that we have a good number of kids and connect with some kids that we maybe haven't connected with, or that we only connect through Fun in the Sundays. If we connect them, they'll be good. 2, if we connect in our brigades kids better than we did last year. So we started to advertise with the boys brigade. We didn't really advertise with the girls brigade, so we need to advertise with both. And really, if we can get more connection in, so that, that sense of, it gives us another chance to share our faith with those kids, but it also builds that sense of Fun in Sunday is Southside, brigades is Southside. And so they're one of the same organism in that sense. It's too easy in our siloed churches to have our siloed youth ministry where Brigades is over there and Brigades is what Merkabat does and Fun in Sundays is what Tarragindi does. And how do we bring those all together and go, this is what Southside does, and we support all these things. We're doing all those. So, and the third element of success is if we're seeing our teenage junior leaders actually stepping up and doing more than they did last year. So I've talked before, what would it look like if, last year Stephanie led the red group and Lucas and Tinky were her supporters? What if Tinky and Lucas led the red group and Stephanie was their supporter? Or perhaps this year it's, what if Stephanie and Lucas and Tinky led the red group and they met before and worked out who was going to do which bits, and they did it as a team. How we did, so that the benefit is not just for the kids who come, but the young people who lead. That here's an opportunity for them to lead. And of course, coming out of that, then how do we find spaces for those young people to be leading for the rest of the year in the church? And that challenge, it might not be stuff that we're doing with children. It might be other areas of the church. Or it might be stuff we're doing with children. Yay, more Sunday school teachers or whatever. But how are we building them up? This is one of the things we have. So we've got that great junior leader program through Jaffa. We've got leadership in brigades. How do we do that better? We've got junior leaders who come and help with Fun in the Sundays. How are we doing that better? How are we really helping them to see, I'm living out my faith and I come and do this? How do we perhaps draw on some of the high school brigaders to come and lead at Fun in the Sundays and develop their leadership there? But yeah, it's all part of this slow development. That's not going to be yay. And it's the challenge of ministry with young people is slow. And the running joke around is, the church goes, we don't have any young people, so we employ the young minister with a young family, because then suddenly, boom, all these young families will come and join our church and we'll have just children and young people flocking out. Or we'll employ a youth worker and suddenly we'll have hundreds of teenagers. Don't work like that. And even most youth workers would tell you that don't work like that. But it's that slow journey, and we slowly develop. We slowly build our credibility in the circles of young people. Connecting with young people is very much about who's there. If my friends are there, then I'm there. How are we encouraging our young people to be bringing in their friends? That sense of how do we get young people to the evening service? Well, they start to come as a group. And it was encouraging again, evening service is back and we go, it's a small group that's meeting every Sunday. There's a couple of young people who've flitted in and flitted out. But that sense of, Jack Bielenberg came one week and sat with Joe, and they had a good time, and I sat with them because that was the wise thing to do. Leaving those two on a table was not good. No, it was good, but you wouldn't just leave. You want someone to keep them not in check, but be with them and encourage them. The next week, he was all primed to come again, but Joe wasn't there. He tried to talk JJ into coming, but JJ had something else on. It's like, if you could just get a few of them coming along. Again, I think I said, so Claire, who we were talking about before, a couple of weeks ago, said, wish it went for longer. And I said, that joking, well, you can hang around for the evening service. She's like, yeah, I could. Alicia, are you hanging around? Because if you are, I'll stay tonight. And it's like, whoa, I sort of said it as that half joking, it's never going to happen. But if I put it out there, maybe one day, here's this person, again, who doesn't have a church background, but it's going, hang on, there's something here within these people that I actually value. And I want to hang out with these people for longer. And so this church service might be a space where I can do that. You know, we struggle to see that. We struggle to do that in any part of our church. You know, even with adults, how do we get adults from our groups into services? We have that chance to do that. And it's going to be, again, a long journey to build up that culture of, we go to Unite and we come to an evening service or something like that. Again, it's that challenge of too often we as human beings want an easy answer. It's why the altar call method was great. You got people down the front, you went, hey, I can list this number of people who have made a commitment. Excellent. Did they follow through in that commitment later in life? Probably not, but I can say we had 10 commitments that night. How successful was that? We do evangelism now differently, and it's that slow burn of walking with young people along in their faith as they develop that faith and work out what that means to follow Jesus. And you don't get that nice, hey, we've got 10 commitments here. But we might get those 10 commitments over time, and they become real commitments, as opposed to 10 people walk down the front. We haven't seen them for the next 12 years, but they walk down the front this service. And so how are we willing to go for that slow, long journey? How are we willing to do the culture changes? How are we willing to walk alongside young people for the long haul that will, develop them, develop their faith, develop the church? And so, sadly, there's no quick and easy answer. There's no, we're going to have hundreds of young people in all our services because we do X, Y, and Z. But if we're willing to put in the time, go the long yards, and go, hey, this is the small change we've seen this year. If by the end of the year we've connected 3 young people in with the evening service on a fairly regular basis, we've probably had a successful year. The natural thing is to go in June, if numbers are fairly stagnant with 1 or 2, it's not worth it. No, it's a slow burn. It's going to take time. We need to be willing to go the journey. And that's going to be various areas around Southside. It's a whole culture change, and it's going to take time. And there's things that we could do to try and speed change up. But I'm one of those people who go, you need people to go at their speed. You need to allow people space to go, okay, I'm ready for this change now, let's go. Oh, hang on. Pull back a bit. Okay, now, yep, ready to go again. And so, so I guess that encouragement of don't get depressed when we don't see major change quickly. Don't get depressed when sometimes we might take a step backward or seem to take a step backwards. As we make change, and as we make changes, sometimes people get put off and so pull out of things. But as we continue to walk that road, we'll start to see change happen. We'll start to see people connecting. We'll start to, see people's faith grow. And so we need to find those stories of the Rubens, of the Caitlins, of the Claires, of the Jacks, that keep reminding us, hey, what we're doing is worthwhile. What we're doing is making a difference. And I don't know if, and I hope the brigades notice it. But that way they're making a difference as they walk from kids from, prep year 1 up to year 12s. And it's hard because you're in your different sections. But to watch them develop. I think you do, but hopefully you do, see those changes. And see the joy of, opportunities like Funny the Sundays to get some of those guys along, and you see how, wow, they have developed into leaders. I said it last year after Funny the Sunday, some of them pains in the butt unite. At Fun and Sunday, it was like, wow, what a leader you are. You are awesome. So how do we do that? How would we allow space? How do we allow time? I need to shut up because there are other time restraints on other people. Thank you for joining us. If you're joining live, thank you. If you're joining in later, thanks for joining us. Feel free to put comments in the comment thing. If you've got questions you'd like us to explore, pop them in the comment section. We'll explore it another time. If you like it, like it. If you want to share it with others, go for it. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you again next week, if not before. Bye, everybody.